Can everybody hear me? Good. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'll have Rob do the land acknowledgement, please. Rob?
On behalf of the town of Essex, we acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. On behalf of the town of Essex.
So at this moment here, if we can all stand for the national. Any conflict at all amongst council members? Seeing none, I'll go right to the closed meeting report from Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
This is just a report that back on July 22nd, council did meet in closed session, and this was as permitted to do so under section 239 2B of the Municipal Act. And at that meeting, council did give administration direction with respect to a town employee. And again, the reason for going into closed session was under 239 2B, which is to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. At this point here, I'll need a motion to adopt the published agendas for tonight's meeting. As amended, Councillor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That one's carried. And adoption of the regular council meetings for July the 19th, please. Could I have a mover for that one? Councillor Guerin and Councillor Workman, all in favor? That one's carried. And we're going to go into public presentations right now. just to let council know, this is a report, an annual report. And they will be back at a future date to answer any questions, okay? This is just their annual report. And before we start with that, I would just like to ask, it would be nice to see somebody from Essex Council sit on this board. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I think there should be a councillor or a mayor sit on this board. So let's start with the annual report. And like I say, it's an annual report and they will come back later for any questions. So thank you. If you're ready, Michelle, you can go ahead.
Thank you, members of council. Thank you for having us here tonight, inviting us here to present our 2020 Regional Landfill Operations Report. I am Michelle Bishop. I am the General Manager of the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority. I replaced the retired Eli Mayotis back in April. With me tonight is Tom Marentet, who is the Manager of Waste Disposal, and he does manage the regional landfill and the site operations there. Tom does have a presentation tonight. If everyone is allowing Tom to share his screen, he's going to do a brief PowerPoint presentation and talk about the operations of the regional landfill for 2020. And from there, we would be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Tom, if you're on, you can start up here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. So I'm going to give this a whirl here. So just be patient here. I'm going to share my screen and get this thing rolling. Okay, can everyone see the presentation there?
Yeah, we've got it, Tom. We've got your notes too, so if you can maximize, that'd be great.
Okay, in here.
If not, the notes are fine.
Let's see here. How's that?
I don't see your screen.
We haven't got nothing yet, Tom.
Okay. Okay.
Looks great.
Looks good. Okay. Now I'm just gonna try one thing to get my notes going here. Now,
Your
Still
notes are
see-
here. Just go ahead.
still see notes?
Just
Or
go
you
ahead.
just okay.
Yeah, you're okay, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for your patience, everyone. And good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, and residents. And thank you for inviting us here this evening to provide you with an overview of the 2020 annual operations report for the regional landfill. And just to note, a copy of which is provided to the town annually. And it's also presented to the members of the Landfill Committee, Landfill Liaison Committee in our quarterly meetings. So I hope to provide you with a sense of what goes into the operation and monitoring of the landfill. And hopefully when life returns to a somewhat normal, we can resume in-person tours of the landfill as well. Seems to have been a big hit in the past, and I hope to get back to that point in the future. Just to begin, I want to recognize all of our essential work staff at the regional landfill that helped to operate and maintain the landfill. And it has been a long and challenging 18 months, as many of you know, with a lot of changes. USWA's goal at the regional landfill is to be a community partner and a good neighbor. And so we strive to communicate promptly and work with our neighbors when issues arise, and we keep our properties well maintained. The regional landfill operates under an environmental compliance approval, or ECA, as it's commonly referred to, and it's issued by the Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, or MECP. As such, we are subjected to regular ministry site inspections and operational requirements, and we maintain a close working relationship with local inspectors, including regular invitations to our landfill liaison committee meetings held each quarter. The annual operations report that I am presenting tonight is just one of those requirements included in our operating ECA. The Essex-Windsor Regional Landfill site was officially opened to the receipt of waste on July 2nd, 1997. Almost 303,000 tons of waste were received during operations in 2020, as compared to 352,000 in 2019. The decrease for this reporting period is most directly related to a decrease in what we call episodic waste, meaning waste that is occasional or irregular in nature, such as contaminated soil. There were some rather large construction projects during 2019, which contributed to the big swing in total tonnage for 2020. If you consider the number of operational days for the landfill, the average waste quantity delivered to the site during 2020 was almost 1,000 tons per day. Canadian Transfer, located in Essex, is under a multi-year contract with the Solid Waste Authority to operate our heavy equipment that is owned by the authority for waste disposal at the regional landfill. This work includes operation of the equipment for the placement and compaction of waste, the placement of daily, intermediate, and final cover, and maintenance of access roads to the tip face. USWA staff work in coordination with equipment operators for traffic control and inspection, and are also responsible for litter, dust control, cleaning of roads, grass cutting, and general maintenance, to name a few. We use a landfilling method called the ramp method, and currently waste is deposited at the top of the ramp or the tip face and is pushed downwards in lift over the operating face. The ramp is maintained at a shallow slope to ensure maximum capacity and machine efficiency. The authority uses a John Deere 1050K bulldozer for pushing waste, an 836 landfill compactor to push and crush the waste and compact it. And we have a D6 dozer, which serves as a backup unit, and we also use it for fine grading around the site. We also use a Caterpillar 725C rock truck and a 326 hydraulic excavator for excavating holes in the waste for special loads in the morning, and also hauling clay cover material from existing stockpiles on site for cover. At the end of each working day, or more frequently as needed, the tipping area is covered with a layer of daily cover material or soil. The primary function of daily cover is to reduce odors, nuisance, vectors, and to prevent fires and blowing litter. Some forms of daily cover may be combined to accomplish this and may include such items as street sweepings, compost overs, or auto shredder fluff. The Solid Waste Authority has implemented a number of waste bans, or landfill waste bans, or restrictions at the site in past years, and those items are now diverted to our recycling depot. The recycling depot at the landfill accepts tires, old clean cardboard, white goods for recycling, and brush, branches, and leaves are ground and processed into compost soil. The Municipal Hazardous or Special Waste, MHSW area facilitates and encourages waste diversion activities and responsible disposal by accepting refrigerant appliances for a fee, blue box recyclables, scrap metal, tires, waste, electrical, and electronic equipment, and household chemical and hazardous wastes. A total of 273 residents in 2020 attended the site to drop off an assortment of chemicals, electronics, tires, and blue box recyclables. Just over 27,000 vehicles crossed the scale at the regional landfill in 2020. And of those, 5,728 entered the site for purposes other than related to landfill operations, which may include MHSW drop-offs or yard waste. And this works out to approximately 70 waste vehicles per day. The authority provides full-time on-site inspection or a full-time on-site supervisor at the regional landfill. And one of the many roles of the supervisor is to schedule staff and conduct perimeter checks of the site on a daily basis to identify such items as leachate springs, erosion, drainage, litter, leachate levels, as well as the supervisor is responsible for ensuring compliance with waste bans and our operating ECA. The regional landfill site sits on 123.5 hectares in size with a waste footprint of 64.5 hectares. The remaining area is considered buffer area. The waste disposal area is divided into 5 cells, and it's further divided into north and south cells for management of construction. At this time, cell 4 south and cell 5 north and south have not been constructed. The last cell construction was cell 3 south, and it was completed in February 2019. And currently, we are landfilling in cell 3 south with existing capacity expected to last for at least the next 2 years. Currently, the projected life of the landfill is 2040. Monthly compaction surveys of the site were carried out in 2020 as well for volume analysis, and the average compaction of waste in 2020 was 0.774 tons per cubic meter, which is almost 23% greater than the minimum accepted compaction criteria of 0.6 tons per cubic meter as listed in our operating ECA. As part of Cell 3 South construction in 2018, a new compost pad was constructed on the buffer lands in the northeast corner of the landfill site. And in 2020, 22,755 tons of yard waste was delivered to the landfill for processing. In 2020, we sold 17,635 tons of compost, which is comprised of bulk, bag your own, and prepackaged bags. The regional landfill also operates a gas management system, which consists of a number of wells established throughout the landfill site designed to reduce landfill gas emissions. In 2009, the authority contracted with Integrated Gas Recovery Services to construct a landfill gas collection system, and they continue to maintain and operate the collection system and vacuum flare today. Staff at the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority carries out day-to-day maintenance of the site, including off-site road patrols to pick up litter. Other activities may include sweeping, scraping of roads, dust control, and the maintenance of the Leachate Collection system or other general repairs. In order to promote thicker and healthier growth of grass on top of our waste cells, several major grass cuts were completed in 2020. By cutting the grass more often, we weed patches do not get a chance to germinate, and the grass is allowed to reestablish itself in poor grass growth areas. A healthy, thick grass growth reduces emissions or erosion and surface water infiltration as well. The regional landfill system operates a gas management system which consists, I think I already read this one, so I think that slide's out of order there. The leachate system. So our waste cells are supported by a perimeter leachate collection system, underdrain system. And leachate is primarily produced from the percolation of precipitation into the refuse. So this underdrain system consists of a series of parallel perforated pipes that were installed at the base of the landfill cell during construction. The pump stations remove the leachate water from the underdrain, where it is retained in lined holding ponds for transport to offsite treatment ponds or treatment plants, or we do use it for on-site irrigation in designated growing areas. Leachate volumes are highly dependent on precipitation, as you may expect. And in 2020, we managed almost 81,500 cubic meters of leachate, compared with just over 95,000 in 2019. During 2020, leachate samples were collected as part of the regional landfill management program, and all results were comparable to historical values. Our ECA also requires that our leachate collection system be flushed and cleaned at least once every 2 years. And this work is currently being conducted via public tender at the regional landfill. A number of additional monitoring programs are also carried out at the regional landfill as required by our ECA. These include such items as monitoring of groundwater and surface water, precipitation, sediment sampling, dust monitoring, and gas monitoring. And finally, we have a complete weather station at the regional landfill to record data on wind speed and direction, temperature, and precipitation. And this information is also used by our environmental consultant for reporting purposes. We also use it to direct placement of our portable litter fences and to assist in ongoing odor complaints. I hope this provides you with a little bit of information and a snapshot of our operations at the regional landfill for 2020, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Tom, for the presentation. At this point here, I'll open it up for questions, but remember, Council, organics, okay, that's a different subject, and they're going to come back later date, and we're going to talk about organics. So let's just concentrate on their report tonight, and I'll open it up for any questions at all. Go ahead. Any questions from Council on the report? Go ahead, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to Tom, life expectancy, it's always something that fascinates me with the landfill. I'm always impressed. We continue to do a better job with compaction, but what are we looking at now in terms of life expectancy? And I think it's important information. Like, I know we're the host municipality, so we're privy to just more information, but it's good to let all of our regional partners know what the life expectancy is so that people understand why, we want to reuse items, reduce items, recycle items, right? Like, there's one landfill and I want it to be around for as long as possible.
That's a great question. We are targeting 2040 as the closure of the landfill, and obviously sometime in 2030 is when serious construction or evaluation and discussion needs to be had on what the gain will be in 2040. But right now, 2040 is projected to be the end of the landfill site as it sits today. that may be pushed out in time with more diversion and better compaction methods. So as of right now, I wish I had a crystal ball, but 2040 looks like the date that we need to keep in mind. And as I said, 2030 is when we really need to start evaluating. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? I have a question, Tom. The property on the opposite side of the road, on the beyond the south side of the road, the Offner farm, is that's owned by the landfill, isn't it? The Offner farm?
I think Michelle would be better to answer that question.
For you, Mr. Chair. We do own an Offner property, but there also is other properties that I believe are still in the Offner family name.
Okay, thank you. I thought we,
quote exactly whose name they're in. I just can't be certain.
yeah, okay, thank you. Anybody else from council? So at this point here, I want to thank you for coming with the report, and we'll see you in the future. So at this point here, I'll need a motion to accept the presentation. Councillor Bowman, seconder, please. Councillor Guerin, all in favor? That's carried. Once again, Tom and Michelle, thank you for the presentation.
And thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving to reports from administration on this evening's agenda. 10.1 is Planning 2021-14 in reference to release of maintenance securities for Phase 5 of the Kimball Estates development. That said report be received and that the maintenance securities in the amount of $8,483.48 for the completion of surface course asphalt be returned to the developer, Kimball Estates.
Rob, this one's pretty straightforward. It's completed, so we're going to release the security. So could I have a mover on this one, please? Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Vandendolen, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
10.2 on this evening's agenda, Planning 2021-15, zoning bylaw amendment to permit second dwelling units in the town of Essex. That said report be received and that bylaw 2035 receive a third reading this evening and finally be passed on August 3rd, 2021. And through you, Mr. Mayor, our Manager of Planning Services, Rita Jabor, would like to address council.
Rita, if you're there, go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, good evening. I'm very happy to report that the County of Essex has approved Official Plan Amendment Number 8, which effectively allows for second dwelling unit policies in our official plan to permit second dwelling units in main dwellings and in ancillary buildings. We've been working on this project for quite a bit of time, and a couple council meetings ago, council did approve a draft zoning bylaw. They gave it one reading, and it's up for 2 readings tonight and final reading. We were waiting on county council approval, and we have it now. There were some revisions that needed to be made to the bylaw 2035, particularly respecting the location of second dwelling units and required yards. So we've added a provision in there to prohibit them in required yards being a required front yard or required rear yard. We also added regulations prohibiting the gross floor area of a second dwelling unit in an ancillary building to exceed the gross floor area of a main dwelling. And finally, we amended the regulations to make it explicitly clear that a short-term rental is not permitted in a second dwelling unit. So before you tonight is bylaw 2035. If passed tonight, it'll be effective tomorrow.
Thank you, Rita. I'm going to open it up for discussion here. Is there any discussion here on this? Councillor Guerin, you're first, and Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. So to Rita, can you just clarify, because I understand that it's going to be the same rules, whether it's rural or urban, for what's going to be permitted. Can you clarify in the urban centers, for example, if it's permitted in a backyard, what is the size of a dwelling in percentage versus the available property? So if someone has a backyard property, I believe it's got to be 6 feet from the building, correct? And so many feet from all the abutting property lines. So I guess if a backyard was 50 by 50, what size percentage of that 50 by 50 could a dwelling be maximum?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Guerin, I just want to clarify that a second dwelling unit in a detached building won't be permitted in a required backyard, for example. So 25 feet between the rear lot line and the main dwelling is what you must keep under our zoning bylaw. So nothing will be permitted within that 25 feet. Now, you can build a second dwelling unit outside of that 25 feet in that building envelope. And with respects to the size of that dwelling, it can't be any bigger than the gross floor area of the main dwelling, but you're also confined to the lot area coverage for that zoning district. So the most common is the low density residential district, which has a 40% lot coverage maximum. So for the main building itself, the second dwelling unit and the detached building and any other building or structure on that property, it's confined to 40%.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any, Deputy Mayor Malash, you were next.
Thank you, through your worship, to Ms. Jabor. So again, following up on Councillor Guerin's question. So if there were a lot that had a 50-foot backyard, let's say they cover off okay with the 40% rule. If they were to put a building 10 feet behind their existing structure in their backyard, and they still had 25 feet behind whatever depth the house was built, the secondary dwelling unit was built in the backyard, is that allowed?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Deputy Mayor Malash, if it was in a zoning district which has a minimum 25 feet rear yard setback, it would be allowed. So you do have that 6 foot distance minimum that you must keep between buildings. And again, that rear yard really varies depending on what zoning district you're in. So if you're in an agricultural district, the rear yard distance is actually 50 feet. So if this building was in an agricultural district and you only had 50 feet to work with and it had to be within that 50 feet, you're in the required rear yard, so it wouldn't be permitted there. But if it was in a zoning district that had a 25 feet minimum rear yard and you were outside of that, then you would be permitted.
Okay, so regardless of, okay. Okay, thank you. I know that we have to absorb the development fees, or development charges, out of our general tax levy on any of these secondary dwelling units that are constructed within any 1 year. I'm wondering if there's a way to build into the bylaw that we can restrict the number that are permits given out for secondary dwelling units. So let's say we had a line in there that said number in the bylaw, something that said to the effect of number of permits for secondary dwelling units will be based on the dollars allocated by council in the budget for that current year. And so, for instance, let's say council decided that we could, or we would put aside $200,000 in, let's say, for budget 2022. I know that dependent on where the structure is going to be, the secondary dwelling unit is going to be built or added on to, it'll change what the development charges are, because some places will have water and sewage development charges that they probably, are the sewage and water charges exempt because they're not connecting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, they would be.
Okay, so it's just the normal development charges for roads or police services or library or parks. So everybody would be the same, but let's say those came to $5,000 a head. I'm not right on the money here, but it would give us, if we set aside $200,000, it would give us an opportunity to do 40 units if we had $5,000 development charges. And after 40 permits are given out for a secondary dwelling unit, we wouldn't allow any more for that particular year. Then we get into the second year. We're not going to increase our property tax base immediately as these houses come along, because it takes time for the Ontario Assessment Board to come back and impact to come back and put a value on, increased value on these and get us our property taxes. So it won't happen immediately. It may take up to 2 years. So in 2023, we could do the same thing, put some dollars aside, but by 2024, we should start getting some tax revenue, and that would give us an opportunity to maybe look at exploring to expand the number of units we would allow. But I'm just concerned that we're going to have an exorbitant number of units that are going to be requested in the first 2 years, and it's just, it'll be a killer on the budget. And I'm trying to look at ways of trying to resolve this. So if you can answer that question, can we limit the number of permits that we would give out for secondary dwelling units?
Take that question, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll go to Lori. Lori, if you can answer it. Go.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor, those are all great comments, and I believe your intent is a good intention, is to see, where can we soften the blow. Unfortunately, there is a mandate that indicates under the Development Charges Act that these development charges be exempt. There unfortunately doesn't give us any wiggle room to say that we can cap it at a certain point, or we can choose who receives a permit or how many permits. It's not something that we would recommend. It's absolutely something that is going against the policy as mandated through the province, and it may put us into some hot water. Where I hear your intent is that, can we soften the blow somehow? Softening the blow perhaps in those areas of the development charges bylaw, so our bylaw, where we as a council and a municipality have chosen to waive and exempt development charges. Maybe that's where, as a council, you have that wiggle room and you have the ability to say, in order to soften the blow on something that is mandated by the province that we have no ability to change, let's take a look at where we exempt commercial, industrial, institutional developments, or perhaps where we've exempt development charges in Harrow for the next foreseeable couple of years. And let's take a look at that financial analysis, and maybe that's where we end up softening the blow. Something as well to consider is the impact at the end of this year certainly may not be that grand, because we're already into August and we may not see a giant amount or a large amount of permits and development charges that are exempt. So let's take a look at what we see at the end of the year as waived for second dwelling units. We of course keep track of all of this information. Kate's on the call and receives that information on a monthly basis from our building division. And then what I would recommend is in 2022, a real full year and a good picture of what we have exempted for development charges at for the SDUs. Let's look at 2022 as a full year impact and see what that is to our bottom line. And then through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, maybe Kate can add some things. And then maybe we take a look at, all right, guys, let's really hunker down on this bylaw and see where we do have that wiggle room to soften the blow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Anybody else from?
I have an additional.
Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I can't remember the answer to this. I think I asked it last time. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Are two-story secondary dwelling units allowed on a property if the existing home is a two-story?
For you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it would be, just cannot exceed the gross floor area of the main dwelling.
Now, if the existing home is a split level or like a back splitter or side split, or just a ranch, are you allowed to have a secondary dwelling unit that's two-story?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you would be permitted,
Okay.
so long as it doesn't exceed the GFA of the main.
Okay.
Thank you, Rita. Anybody else from council? Okay, who was next? Councillor Bjorkman, then Councillor Bondi. No? Okay, Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Yeah, Councillor Bondi was first.
Okay, Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that this is really exciting. I know there's some families wanting to go grab some permits tomorrow morning. So I hope our building and bylaw department is ready, because I know how busy we already are. So, and I'm getting a lot of residents throughout the county and other municipalities asking their councils if they're doing this, and they're not quite doing this yet, some of them. So I think accolades to our administrative team that I believe we're leading the pack. And this is one thing I really want to, maybe we look at our website and start, affordable Essex. So we have a section on some of the things we're doing on how we're making Essex affordable. And we put this in there, did you know that you can do this? So along the lines of some of the questions already raised is I'm getting, I think in my head, I can split rural and urban. So the same question that just came up, and I just want to ask it one more time, please, is in a subdivision, say like mine, where I have, it's a urban area and all the houses are one story. What's to stop somebody from creating a secondary dwelling unit that is two stories and virtually, hawkeyeing everybody else? And how can we control that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with the current regulations, there really is nothing stopping somebody from building a two-story second dwelling unit when the main dwelling is one story. Again, it's regulated through gross floor area. The way you can regulate it, of course, is through your zoning bylaws. So if you wanted to limit the size of the second dwelling unit in terms of height, we can stipulate that it be limited to one story.
Okay, thank you, Rita. So that is something that I think we want to keep an eye on. If we have areas, and I'm not talking rural, I don't think agriculture is the same. I think we're looking at our subdivisions. If we start to get these secondary dwelling units that are, really high and peering into everybody's backyard, I think we're going to get complaints. I'm not sure how to deal with that right now. I'm in favor of passing it tonight and maybe looking at modifications down the line. So thank you to Rita and Lori and everybody else working on this. And I hope Kevin's pencil is sharpened and ready to go. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Go ahead, Lori, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's definitely a great comment, Councillor Bondi, about being ready tomorrow, and we certainly are. We are working on an education campaign for members of the public that are interested in, for example, converting existing ancillary structures or accessory structures into second dwelling units and what steps they need to take. We also are working on an education campaign for to spread the word. And these are types of instances where if you don't know, you don't know. If you are a resident in the town of Essex and you're excited about having your in-laws move in with you, but just don't know what to do. So we want to be able to prepare our building division and our planning division as well. There may be instances where it's permitted by right and it goes straight to building, but there may be instances as well where if a resident has certain limitations, they may apply for a minor variance at the Committee of Adjustment. So our planning division also needs to be just as ready. We are excited to be able to share these types of victories. And I know that not only development services, but through to our CAO, Mr. Nepsy, these are these types of victories that we like to show off. And it's certainly one that we've been working hard at. And would love to continue to show us off as the town that we are very progressive, and these are the types of things that we just don't sit on for too long. Once it's down, mandated from the province down, we get moving, and we are so lucky to have a progressive planning division that stays on top of these legislative changes.
Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, and to Director Chadwick and to Ms. Jabour and the rest of the team. It's great. This council has pushed you in a few directions too. I mean, you brought this forward, and we didn't like this, we didn't like that. We were concerned. We'd heard from our residents, and you really have put together this package. But I think it's important to say again what Deputy Mayor Malash was after, that here's another case where the province mandates we have to have something and we get zero funding to go with it. Actually, they won't let us raise funding to help pay for it. We've put together a very progressive investment program for our builders in Harrow, for builders that want to come in and do institutional and want to do commercial. We've done all that on purpose to drive business to Essex. And I understand your suggestion, Director, with regard to, looking at those areas, maybe that's where we can soften the blow. But we did those things on purpose so that we could increase our tax base, so we could attract this kind of thing and attract more people to live here and work here. And I just think it's ridiculous that the province can come along and tell us we have to do things and tell us to pay for them. So great work. We're thrilled with it. I just need to have that moment to make sure that people understand we're doing things as much as we can with the town, many times without getting any funding for it and having to find tax monies to cover those things. So that's it. We're looking forward to it. I know there's lots of people can't wait to start building. So we're excited about it to be here. Thank you.
Councillor Bjorkman, just if I could just say one thing, I'm very disappointed on development fees. I think this is going to be a big burden on our monies that we're going to have to put into infrastructure in our budget. So I can't believe that we have to waive development fees and senior levels of government will not step in to help us out here. That's unbelievable to me. As far as the project itself, I do support it. I do have concerns. I have big concerns about the urban area. Like two-story structures in like Councillor Bondi said, in a subdivision where they're all one-level homes, and here we're going to allow a two-level building. We got to be careful. I mean, I can see in the urban section of this, we're going to have some problems. We are going to have some problems. As far as rural, not a problem whatsoever. But when you get into the urban area, I think we're going to have some problems. So this is something we got to work on. And Rita and Lori, you know how I feel about it. We've had talks about it, and I don't want to be the spoiler. I'm going to support it, but we really have to be careful what we're doing in the urban areas. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Councillor Vandendolen and then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I also support this, but I think I support it a lot more wholeheartedly than the mayor and my fellow councillor Bjorkman. I'm glad the province has done it this way, that we can't tax this activity, because the reason the province brought in this rule is to boost the construction of more housing units. We need more housing units. Everybody knows we're desperate for it. And if you tax it, you get less of it. So I think they did the right thing, because there wouldn't be a big lineup of people ready to file tomorrow if they knew they were going to get hammered with another set of taxes. So I think kudos to the province as well as our staff for getting this through. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that we should be talking about getting this set up so that we cannot build a two-story, at least in urban centers, before we pass this bylaw. So my question is to either Rita or Lori on how fast can we get this changed in our planning bylaw? Or does this something that we can throw into this particular bylaw itself?
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm wondering, and maybe Rob or Rita, you can chime in, if we can make this change on the fly. Is that possible, Rita? Or Rob? And we can actually make this change, or we present it on August 23rd.
Couldn't we
I'm
make
just-
that change? Couldn't we make that change now, Lori?
I'm just
Uh,
looking.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think for transparency, it would be better if the bylaw as changed would come back.
Okay, all right, so it'd have to come back.
So August 23rd is the next meeting. We can
Yes.
certainly bring that forward on August 23rd. The suggestion for height, just for clarity's sake, that the maximum height in a residential district, let's just say, Rita, correct me if I'm wrong, is like 15, 20 feet, something like that. Let's just say in a typical R1.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the building height maximum is approximately 32 feet in your
So
standard.
accessory structures, let's just hypothetically, an accessory structure such as a detached garage could be as high as what?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's limited to 1 story, which is 13 feet.
So something to consider as a council then, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council, is if an accessory structure such as a garage detached could be, or is limited to 1 story, is that something that you would like to see as a regulation put on for second dwelling units that are detached? Does that make sense, Rita? Is that where I'm reading the room here as well? Is that a possibility, Rita?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. Your zoning bylaws there to regulate height, and a second dwelling unit being ancillary accessory building. It makes sense to keep it the same as the garage.
I would like to see that in this bylaw before we pass it. I'm not sure how the rest of council is on this, but that's my feeling on it.
Just one further question on that to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, of course. Would that preclude or exclude a second dwelling unit from being constructed on top of an existing garage? In other words, we have residents that are interested in maybe not converting the main floor of their detached garage, but building a unit on top. Is that something that you would like to see as well, regulated as not something you would support as a council?
Well, I don't know how the deputy mayor feels on this, but this is the same, to me, that's the same situation. You're going up height. It doesn't matter if it's on top of the garage or not. You're still going higher. You're going pretty well to 2-story building. So I don't know how the deputy mayor feels on that, but I wouldn't want to see that. I don't, looking at this, I really can't support going into subdivision and seeing, going down the street and seeing a building here, higher than next door neighbor. To me, I don't know. We're going to run into a problem, and I would not like to see a 2-story building, period. I think it should be the same height as the existing building itself, no higher. So I don't know how the deputy mayor feels on that, but
again, I'm talking about, is there a way of separating urban versus rural? Rural lots tend to be a lot larger, a lot more side yard. I'm not as concerned in rural areas as I am in urban center, where if someone were to had a large enough backyard that they could build a secondary dwelling unit in their backyard, that they're got a second story that peers across and looks down on everybody's backyards. Same with even being at the side of the house. I'm not as concerned, I guess, at the side of the house. I'm trying to ensure that if the nature of the neighborhood is split levels, or if the nature of the neighborhood is single ranch homes, that we're not putting a second dwelling unit that is 2 stories that just looks down at the rest of the neighborhood.
Deputy Mayor. I think Councillor Verbeek wants to add something. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. At one point when I raised my hand, I was ready to make the motion. I was hoping this would pass tonight as it was received because I thought it was wonderful. But I do understand the spirit of what the deputy mayor is getting at here. But I would hate to see a wrench put, like, I don't want to throw a stick in your spokes here and send you right back to the drawing board. But I'd also hate to see this come back to us again on the 23rd with, no second story, because we have a lot of, even in our urban centers along South Talbot and Guestos, we have a lot of places where putting an apartment on top of a garage or building a 2-story secondary unit would fit right in with the neighborhood. Certainly, as the deputy mayor said, not where there's a whole neighborhood of ranch style homes. That would be a big sore thumb and it would be a major inconvenience to the neighbors. But we do have a lot of areas where this would fit and it would answer to the housing crisis. If you have someone that wants to put something on top of their garage. So I don't want to do anything to hobble you guys moving this forward. But I do understand where the deputy mayor, where this is coming from. Like, he doesn't want to infringe upon neighborhoods where it just really would be harmful to the neighbors, right? So is there a way to, just I don't know, you can't pick and choose once we do it where it goes and where it doesn't, right? So it would have to be in the bylaw as it's written. But there's lots of places in town where putting an apartment on top of a garage would work.
Thank you, Councillor. I think Deputy Mayor, you were next, then Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. So a question I would have is, would the Committee of Adjustment have the ability to give a variance if someone wanted to build a 2-story out of their garage and they felt it was conducive to the looks of the neighborhood and wouldn't be intrusive into other yards, that the Committee of Adjustment could allow for that to happen? But in a normal situation, it wouldn't happen unless you ask for a variance.
Go ahead, Rita.
For you, Mr. Chair, yes, if the garage was in a required yard and they wanted to put a second story on top to accommodate that second dwelling unit, they have the ability to ask the Committee of Adjustment for that variance. And the Committee of Adjustment, using their 4 tests, looking at the impact on the neighborhood and other matters, they can decide to allow them to put that second dwelling unit on top of that garage. Keep in mind, a lot of accessory buildings are located in the required backyard. So a lot of these people are going to have to go to the Committee of Adjustment automatically as per the regulations we're proposing tonight. I also want to clarify that in the proposed regulations, we do allow for the addition of a second dwelling unit on top of a garage. So we allow for a 2-story building in that case. But again, it has to be outside of that required yard. So it can't be 4 feet from a rear lot line, for example.
Okay, so my point is here that at some point in time, if we put a bylaw in that says it can only be 1 story, that there are methods, if it fits, that people will still have the ability to go to a 2-story. But it just won't be a universal yes. Anybody and everybody can have a secondary dwelling unit. If they want a secondary dwelling unit that's 2-story or build on top of a garage, then they're forced to go to the Committee of Adjustment, and there's a review that says, this fits in the neighborhood or it doesn't fit in the neighborhood. I like that idea much better than just blanket saying everybody and anybody can go to 2-story regardless.
Councillor Guerin.
And Mr. Mayor, when you're ready, we'll make a motion with that amendment, and then we can see how it goes.
Okay, Councillor Guerin, go ahead.
Yeah, it's you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think Rita and Deputy Mayor Malash just kind of what I was going to say. we do still have the Committee of Adjustments has an authority that can approve this additional application if somebody wanted to go two-story. Then it starts getting more site-specific. It starts getting more, and your neighbors get a voice in it. There's a fee attached with the application, so a serious person that wants to, someone's serious about building, then they'll take that extra step, and some won't because of the extra cost involved with it. I don't think it's so much red tape as much as it is just trying to make sure that we're going to do this one time. We're going to try to do it right. That's the bottom line. There are places I can go around Essex Center and identify many places that already have this garage with a living space above it that we've permitted in the past, whether it be must have been through Committee of Adjustment in a day. We do have properties that are also in the urban center that back onto Kingsville or back on the lakeshore, or they back onto agricultural lands where I could still see, even though they're an urban center, the two-story being allowed. But I really am leaning towards pausing it a little bit, even if it's for next meeting. I like Deputy Mayor Malash's suggestion about doing that. I do have the concerns with the dense populated areas, subdivisions. Some people may have two stories in a subdivision, others around it may only have one. So you allow them to put a two-story up, it's not going to change the way it's going to be, and vice versa. Now you got a budding property, it's just one story. He can only build one story, even though the guy behind him or two guys behind him have two-story. So it's difficult, but this is better than what, like Councilor Bonnie said, better than a lot of the municipalities have done so far. We're leading the way. I just think we got to take our time and do it right. Great job.
Lori, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify before a motion is made, those restrictions to height, are you, just to clarify, for residential districts only, and that agricultural districts would be permitted by right, 2 stories?
I believe that's the route that I would go.
Yes.
It would be in urban centers where I felt that it should be one story.
Okay, so we regulate through zoning districts, so we would say residential districts or agricultural districts.
Yeah, that's correct, Lori.
Okay.
Okay, at this point here, I think Deputy Mayor Malash, you want to give direction and maybe defer the third reading? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yes. I guess when we make a change to an existing bylaw, and we've had 2 readings already, that it gives everyone an opportunity to look at it before we pass it. So I would say that we probably have to wait till our next meeting to pass this.
Okay.
I'm suggesting that we might have to do that, but let's see where council goes with this.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any way we can settle the rural portion tonight? Is there any way we can move forward with any of that? I'm not sure how, or even have the building department look at approving some of those in principal review, because I do know that there are families that are like chomping at the bit, waiting, right? They want to get building, right? So I know it's only another 2-3 weeks, but for these families, it's another 2-3 weeks. I think, people maybe have vacations. They want to get building. So how can we do that? Is that possible?
Councilor Bondi, I do not think that's possible until we do pass the bylaw, unfortunately. So, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, so you give direction, Deputy Mayor Malash.
So I do have one other question. Can we change the bylaw this evening to include the fact that in residential areas that we limit the height of the buildings to 1 story and still pass the bylaw this evening?
Can we or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would still recommend that for transparency purposes, it would still be best to make this change. And if that's the change that council desires, allow the public the opportunity to provide comment by bringing it back to the August 23rd meeting. If once again, if that's council's wish, that would certainly be my recommendation.
Okay. I just want to be clear and know for sure, because I agree with Councillor Bonnie. I know people that are interested in going ahead with this right away, but I believe that this is important enough that we have to go this route.
Yeah.
So my motion is that we delay the third reading so that we can include in this bylaw a resolution or an additional sentence or paragraph that depicts the fact that we want in the residential areas to stay one-story structures only, regardless of what's on the property.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I have a seconder on that, please? Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10.3 on this evening's agenda is Drainage 2021-09, results of requests for tender in regards to the construction of the Barrett Drain, repairs and improvements. That said report be received and that council award to Barrett Excavating Incorporated in the amount of $100,890.88.
Have a mover on this report, please. Councillor Bjorkman, a seconder, please. Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
10.4, Community Services 2021-10, re St. Peter's ACHS College School lease of the second floor at Harrell Arena. That said report be received, that council approve the entering into of an agreement with the All Canadian Hockey School, Inc., subject to the general terms and conditions outlined in Bylaw 2049. That Bylaw 2049 receive 3 readings and be finally passed, and that Bylaw 2044 be repealed effective immediately. And through you, Mr. Mayor, our Deputy CAO and Director of Community Services, Doug Sweet, was looking to provide some comments to council.
Okay, Doug, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To council, as you're aware, we recently, a few weeks ago, passed a lease for the same group at the Lions Hall in Harrell. As in the report, but I just want to make it noted so the public's aware too. Since that time, the Harrell Arena second floor space became available. It's more conducive to the use for this school program. There's better synergies with the town facility using the arena, the ice during the winter months. So it was a good fit. And when this opportunity came up, we wanted to bring back a new lease. So that's what's presented to you tonight in front of council.
Thank you, Doug. That does make a lot of sense. That's good. I'm happy that this is happening there. Any questions on this one? Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that this is a really good fit too. It's unfortunate that we had to lose a karate club in our community, but now we are filling this space. And I think it's going to be really good for marketing the private school. You know, they have the arena right there. Hopefully that canteen can get up and running. I see this school as a pillar to keeping our Harrow Arena nice and full and using that ice time during the day. This is such an exciting time for Harrow in our community and everything that could be coming. So I'm thrilled and I hope council supports this. And I can't wait to see the private school kids skating on the ice and using our arena and eating at our Legion. And I'm just, I'm thrilled to have them in our community.
Malash, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, your worship. Yes, a much better fit. And I think this is going to help help the school be able to attract more students and be more successful. And as Councillor Bondi mentioned about the canteen, this may be an opportunity for the canteen to become more profitable and maybe offer a larger selection of foods, because There may be an opportunity for the school even to work out a deal with the canteen to provide some of the meals that they would require to for their schooling. So this is definitely a win-win that they were able to move into the top of the school. So keep our fingers crossed. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anybody else? Councillor Bowman, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I'm presuming they're giving up the lease on the Lions Hall, or are they keeping both properties?
Mr. Mayor, no, we're repealing that lease and this will be their only
Okay.
lease.
Thank you.
Good. A motion to receive this, please. Move forward. Councillor Guerin and a seconder, please. Councillor Bowman, all in favor? That one's carried. Thank you.
Under item 12, any updates from County Council?
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through your worship. I just want the rest of the council to be aware of a project that they're working on at the county in regard to insurances. And of course, all across the county, every municipality has to have insurance coverage. And it's becoming more and more difficult. It's becoming more and more expensive to have coverage for insurance in every facet of our operations. So what's been suggested at the county level is that they're going to reach out and try and figure a way to offer to contract insurance services for any municipality that wants to, and this is yet to be determined, but it sounds like municipalities that would want to buy into the insurance coverage through the county would be able to do so rather than having our own administration have the need to go out and become an expert, which is very difficult to try and figure out if we're getting the best coverage or if we're who's going to cover us, looking for quotes and so on. We would probably still have to manage our own ins and outs, expenses and claims and so on. It's all yet to be determined, but the county is looking at trying to strike up a system where the county would offer that service to any municipality that's interested in getting in on it. And I think this is going to be a great adventure for the entire county, all of our municipalities, because with the bigger buying power that the county has, along with any municipalities that jump on board with them, you'd have a better opportunity. We may be able to look at a lot more self-insuring and rather than buying insurance. The other thing that we look at is because there'd be so many dollars involved, at some point in time, they could hire an insurance expert that would save perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars across the county by having somebody that works in the industry specifically doing that for the county and all the municipalities. So it's something that's being looked at. The county just settled their insurance plan, and we were privy to that in our last meeting. We were looking at, in our budget, we put in a 10% increase at the county, and it actually came to 13.5% increase. And it's a huge dollar amount, huge dollar amount that we're talking about. The increase was $128,000. So, and then there's going to be additional costs that are related to our increased deductibles as well. So it's something that is going to be coming, and it's something that we'll probably have to bring back to, at some point in time once the county gets the details. They're looking at having a consultant look at this to try and figure out the best way to handle it. But it does make sense for something like this to move forward and get better coverage. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Moving on to item 13, correspondence, that all of the correspondence listed in agenda item 13.1 be received.
we will, I'll have a motion to receive it all, and if there's any questions, we'll come back. So can I have a mover, Counselor Bjorkman and Counselor Bowman? All in favor? Is there any one item somebody wants? Go ahead, Counselor Bondi.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think to our clerk, the question I have is on Enbridge Gas Inc. Like, my question is why and how this is on our agenda, because it's I'm just curious because it's an Ontario Energy Board application. And I do know that ELK does Ontario Energy Board applications, and those traditionally haven't been included on our agenda. So I'm wondering if Enbridge is doing this as a proactive way, or if they legally have to do it. And if so, my question is, in the future, I think that it would be beneficial for this council to have also, the ELK applications for rates come on our agenda, particularly, it's good to see them. You learn a lot of information on them. I've printed all the ELK applications off and read them, but they're hard to find. So my question is, why is this on the agenda? Do we typically get these on our agenda? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bondi. No, we don't typically receive these, but this was specifically circulated to us. So we decided to add that to the agenda. As far as the question whether they're legal, certainly look into that and report back to council. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but it was specifically circulated to us.
Any other item? Okay, thank you.
13.2 of this evening's agenda is correspondence to be considered for receipt or receipt and support. 13.2.1 is a request for a variance from the noise bylaw 690. That the said request for a variance from noise bylaw 690 to extend a wedding reception to 12 a.m. be received and supported. And again, Mr. Mayor, to that, our Director of Development Services, Ms. Chadwick, I believe would like to make a few comments to council on this application or request. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Rob. Lori, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening once again, Council. The request here is for an exemption to the noise bylaw, just for clarification purposes. The proposed use has been in question lately, and we want to confirm that the use is permitted under the zoning and the site plan agreement that we entered into at Magnolia Ranch, or for Magnolia Ranch rather, in, I want to say, late 2019 or early 2020. The use is permitted, but that does not mean that noise can be emitted for non-agricultural uses on agricultural properties without council's permission. So these are those types of instances where it's a use that is established, is permitted in an agricultural district, but the use is, or rather the noise is not agricultural in nature. So these are the types of instances. Now you as a council have the authority to set the time, although the request is there for the noise to be, or rather the reception to end at 11 or the noise to end at 11. It is up to you as a council, because these are not typical agricultural related type operations. And so currently in our noise bylaw, you do have the authority to set that decision any which way you would like. We also wanted to share with you Bylaw Enforcement Division, as well as the Clerk's Division through Mr. Rob Auger, that the noise bylaw is currently being revised and will be presented to you in the near future to clean up some of the kind of the gray area, or not so much the gray area, but the aspect for agricultural districts, and where we find ourselves tonight hearing an exemption for use that is not agricultural in relation rather. Thank you.
Lori, is this a one-time request here?
This looks like it is one-time request for one particular event on August 21st. And the owners of Magnolia Ranch are aware that if there are other events, that an exemption must be submitted to council.
Thank you, Lori.
Request for-
Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess a comment and a question. So if we don't support this request, then come 11 o'clock, the expectation is that this wedding is going to have to kind of turn the volume down out of respect for the neighbors. Is that correct? At around 11? No. They're
I think
attention to midnight, right? And I also wonder, is this is the first time we've had this come in front of us? But we all have the emails we've been receiving. Is this because the operators at the ranch have directed the proponents you're going to need to get an exception? Is this a result of the neighbors complaining from all the other events that did go over and stay loud late?
If I may speak on this, Councillor Verbeek, I had many complaints from residents in that area. I live right in that area. Excessive noise all hours of the morning. It is a problem. First of all, I think Lori can speak on this. I think the first item was zoning. The zoning wasn't proper there at one time to have a wedding there and receptions, but I'll let Lori speak further to it. But no, this is complaint driven. Like I say, I had several complaints, and I think some of the other counselors in the area also had complaints. So I'll leave it at that and go right back to Lori. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so as we all may have recalled, before the wedding season, this particular summer, the use was just solely a bed and breakfast. And so that use didn't emit noise that garnered those complaints. And as you all know, our bylaw enforcement division is complaint-based. We have intake through report a problem or direct email or phone calls. And so, yes, we have received those types of complaints ourselves at administration. We also educated the owners, our applicants, of their requirements, their obligations, and this being a new on-farm diversified use to them. So that is something that we also need to educate those applicants and say, okay, you've checked off your box for zoning, you've checked off your box for site plan agreement, you've checked off your box for establishing this microbrewery, but now you have to also check off the box for any noise that you plan on emitting as a result of this on-farm diversified use. So on one hand, we do have that the tourism aspect and utilizing this property and making it as as wonderful and highest and best use as possible. But we do also have an obligation to educate those property owners on their obligations and what they require if they want to emit noise that may impact residents or property owners at what we call the point of reception. Something that you did ask Councillor Verbeek earlier about this 11 p.m. timeframe. And I believe, Mr. Auger, if I can put that question on to you, to Rob, currently in an agricultural district, there's actually, it doesn't explicitly indicate that the maximum timeframe is 11 p.m., which is why, according to my earlier comment, you actually have the ability to set that time yourselves. Rob?
Too, Lori, excess of noise can be dealt with anytime during the day. So just let council know that any time of the day, excess of noise can be dealt with our bylaw officer. So just add that. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, really nothing to add through you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Chadwick, as she laid it out just now, correct. There's right now the current bylaw does not set a particular time, but as Ms. Chadwick said, council has that discretion.
Thank you, Rob. Any other questions on this here? Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead. You're muted, Councillor. Councillor, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
So yes, I'm going to make the motion that we receive this, but that we don't support it. I believe the proper coming forward would be for the venue to ask for a noise bylaw. We don't have any way to keep the Ms. Mastronardi to continue to this, and we will just continue to get brides and grooms and families sending us requests for late night noise exemptions, but we aren't able to hold the venue responsible. I believe the venue should be the one asking to have the noise extension. The neighbors that have been here have been complaining since last year about the noise that comes through. We have a tent that has big speakers, either a band or a DJ. There is no sound mitigation between where the band and the DJ are playing and the homes that are next door. We have residents that have young ones as 4 years old to seniors in their 80s that are having actual concussive. The bass comes through the walls of their house. So I believe it's important that the venue be responsible for the noise. It's not unlike our water rules. You can have as much water on your property as you want. You just keep it on your property. You can't have your water go on to the neighbors. I believe noise is the same way when it's commercial. This isn't something that's going to happen twice during the summer and we're not going to hear of it again. They're going to do this every Friday and Saturday night for the entire wedding season, which is going to go from May till September, October. So I believe it's on the venue to make these applications. And when they do, there should be some way that they're dealing with their neighbors. How are you taking care of making sure you're not bleeding out onto your neighborhood? So at this time, I would, I'll make a motion that we receive the application, but we do not support it. There is time for 2 weeks from now for the venue to come forward and ask for the same and explain to us how they've been dealing with their neighbors.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree 100% with what you're saying. Before we go any farther, I'll go to Councillor Vanendel and then the Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I support Councillor Bjorkman's motion, but only for the technical reason is that it should be the venue applying. But I think I'm going to vote in favor of noise. I'm in favor of parties. I think it's kind of weird the way society is moving to silence everybody. I mean, there's a big difference between industrial noise and the terrible cacophony we put up with every day from motorcycles and modified sports cars and modified pickup trucks, which wake me up in the middle of the night constantly. They go 24/7, and yet here we are trying to prevent social fun from making noise. I just think it's weird, and it's again too much government. So yes, we should receive this. We should have the venue apply for this, but I think we should allow a little bit more noise. I mean, there's only 3 houses within 1,000 feet of this place. I mean, if you can't make noise in the country, where the heck can you? You know, I think we're going too far with this uber control of noise.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bondi, you were next, and then we'll go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of the motion. I believe we have to seek balance, and these residents around this area have been complaining for a while. It's negatively impacted the quality of life for our communities. If you read what our noise bylaw says at the beginning, it's like to regulate noise within the municipality to ensure that quality of life is there for our residents, basically. And so this is why we have the noise bylaw. Like a couple years ago, well, many years ago, about 15 years ago, I was washing my car in my driveway, playing the radio, and the police came on me because my radio was too loud. So, you know, I learned a hard lesson there. And I like partying too. Don't get me wrong. I like loud music too. But I think there's a time and a place, and I'm not sure that this is the place. And a wedding is a time. So I believe the date is August 21st. And the next council meeting, I don't think is till August 23rd. So
that's correct.
Okay. So I think that we have to let this, young woman know that we're not in support But even if the venue wants to ask, it's too late for this wedding, unfortunately. And I think the venues do have to come forward and ask, and they have to canvass the neighborhoods. They need to do that work for us. They come, I think our noise bylaw for weddings or whatever it is, has a radius of whatever it is, 100 meters. And within that 100 meters, they need support of 80% of the residents in order to have it. We need to look at something like that. So the onus is on the venue. And so that we as council don't have to do all the legwork for them. If they want it, they have to do the work, and they have to prove to us that they have the majority of the community in support. So at this point, I will be supporting Councillor Bjorkman's.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash, you had something to add? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm in support of the motion as well. And I do believe this is a quality of life issue for some of the neighbors, regardless of how many it is. They were there first. This venue came along second, without really putting anything in place to have consideration to the noise levels that the neighborhoods how they may affect the neighborhood with their noise, with their music and so on. There are ways to mitigate the way the sound comes out, and give direction to where the speakers are at, perhaps some kind of wall that behind behind where the tent is at. I understand the need for outdoor facilities at this point in time, so that and they were a savior to many people that wanted to get married in the last year. But I think we have to look at the residents that were there already. I do believe that the owner themselves must be coming to us to look for the noise bylaw exemption, because if they want the noise bylaw exemption, we have to know that they're doing everything they possibly can to mitigate the amount of noise that the neighbors are hearing. So once those are in place, then we can perhaps let them have an exemption to the noise bylaw. There are ways of doing it, because I know in other locations, Coan Park, for instance, has ways of, when they have the mug run, they've got two different bands playing there, and you don't know that those two bands are playing at the same time, based on the way they've got the music set up. There are ways of mitigating the sound. So the venue is the one that has to take charge and make sure that happens. If they want to continue having their rentals, the music is going to be a big part of whether they get people there to rent the property. So it's up to them to make sure that they're not disturbing the neighbors. So I'm in favor of what Councillor Bjorkman is suggesting here.
Deputy Mayor. So at this point, we had direction from, okay, go ahead, Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to touch base on this venue again. So did we say the venue was a licensed venue, or is this just a person's home that's outside the zoning for what they're doing, and they've been attracting wedding parties? Is this what's going on here? And then I have a follow-up to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Guerin. So in agricultural districts, bed and breakfasts are permitted by right. And about a year and a half to 2 years ago, the owners requested permission to diversify, meaning what type of on-farm diversified use could they add to their facility. And so they had indicated that they wanted to have a wedding venue. The wedding venue would only be supported as an ancillary use to an on-farm diversified use, meaning were they going to be operating an agricultural operation as a bed and breakfast? No, but they wanted to establish a brewery. The brewery had to be the main component so that the wedding venue could be permitted. The brewery is currently established and has passed that check mark for that temporary approval that we gave them about a year and a half ago. It was a site plan control application that came forward year and a half to 2 years ago. It allowed us to see their big picture project. It was happening in 2 phases, if you may recall, Councillor. The second phase was the permanent larger venue for the brewery, a larger brewery, and the larger wedding event venue, which is all going to be in a building, not in a tent.
Okay,
All
so,
permitted by right.
okay, so what separates that business from, say, Cooper's Hawk Winery or another winery in the agricultural area that wants to have outdoor weddings, maybe not all the time, but sometimes, or they want to have just some outdoor music sometimes?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Guerin. Do you mean as far as if the use is permitted? Because both wineries, as well as bed and breakfast, as well as breweries are permitted in agricultural districts.
So this business is permitted then?
Yes,
Okay.
as long
So-
as the brewery was established, which it has been.
So it's absolutely no difference then, other than there may or may not be some residents that live closer to this venue than maybe another winery, for example. Or
Right.
another, okay.
Now,
So-
as far as the tent, a tent permit would be required as well. So if there's going to be an outdoor component, an outdoor tent, the building division receives an application for a tent.
Yeah, okay. So one of our wineries or this particular business wants to have an outdoor gathering, whether it's a wedding reception or just a gathering. Say during our tour of the wineries that we do there in the summertime normally. They want to have some music. Typically, they would have to apply to us for that music, or would they just do it and hope that nobody bothers them? They would just do it in hopes that no one bothers them, right? Yes. So I guess what I'm getting at here, do we really want this venue to have to come to us every time they want to have a reception on a Friday or a Saturday in the summer and apply for something that anybody else in the region, wineries and that don't have to do? I don't understand. I really don't understand it here.
It's a
The
use.
Fun Fest and the beer mug run, those are two totally different things. And we have residents who apply to our town during Fun Fest weekend to have the noise bylaw removed. We've done it in the past. That's a one-off. This business doesn't sound like to me it's a one-off. Do we need to give them permission, all these businesses, every time they want to have music and an outdoor tent?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Guerin, it's the circumstance because of the zoning that indicates that it's not an agricultural noise typical of an agricultural district. We are very unique in Essex County, or in the town of Essex, where we have wineries in our agricultural districts. But if it was a combine, if it was livestock, those types of noises would be permitted and would not require an exemption. So agricultural properties that are emitting noise that are not a typical farming type of noise need an exemption currently in our noise bylaw. Because we're looking at our noise bylaw, what I'm hearing you say tonight is that agribusinesses, we may have to look at agribusinesses and noises that are emitted from agribusinesses as potentially something that we need to look at in our noise bylaw. Considering on-farm diversified uses and the agritourism development strategy and all sorts of wonderful things about our municipality, we have agricultural districts and businesses that operate in agricultural districts that emit noise. And, you know, they're not considered right now farming type of noise that would be permitted by right. It's noise that at the point of reception is impacting existing residents.
Okay.
Rob, anything to add on that?
Thank you.
No, but it's certainly part of that review, you know, to look beyond and to, you know, to consider matters, you know, not just like you mentioned, Ms. Chadwick mentioned, your typical and historical noises associated with agricultural operations. I think part of the review would extend beyond that.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. So at this point here, we had Councillor Bjorkman. He made a motion. Can I get a seconder on his motion, please? I need a seconder on, you want to, okay, Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor of that motion? It's carried. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 13.2.2, that the correspondence by ChildCan, the Childhood Cancer Research Association's correspondence asking council to consider proclaiming Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the town of Essex be received and supported, and if so supported, that council proclaims the month of September 2021 as Childhood Cancer Awareness in the town of Essex by adopting the resolution noted.
Thank you, Rob. Deputy Mayor Malash, you're going to make the motion? Great. I think it's good. Yeah. And seconder, Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, item 14, that the Personnel Committee meeting minutes dated June 23rd, 2021 be received and adopted as circulated.
Have a mover on this one, please. Councillor Bowman, and a seconder, please. Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moving to reports and announcements from the council members.
Councillor Bowman, do you have anything?
Just pointing out that our music in the parks is moving right along, and people are really enjoying it. And it'd be nice to see some more counselors out at those. I saw some last night, so that's good. And a week ago, and Wednesdays in Essex, and Mondays in Colchester. So what a nice way to spend your evenings. So please join them.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bondi, anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to take this opportunity and thank council for the opportunity to bring this community together. The community came together in the last 2 weeks, more than I've ever seen in the last 11 years. You know, within 24 hours, the GoFundMe page raised approximately $2,300. And tonight I got to do a live draw. So the charity winners are Kick It Capes, Mental Health Addictions at Hotel Dieu Grace Hospital, the Kiwanis Club, Sunshine Point Camp, Windsor Essex Therapeutic Riding Association. Each of them will get approximately $650. So everybody, you know, different corners of our municipality, all wards and all political stripes really reached out and made sure that they expressed their thoughts, their feelings. You know, I was getting yelled at in Sanford and Sons the other day. I'm 150% behind you. And it's just really great to see us all come together, act like a team, and be sure to send that message that, my money's gone. It's not about the money, but the community's voice is certainly still here. So thank you, council. And it's been great.
Councillor Verbeek, you're next. Nothing. Deputy Mayor Malash, do you have anything? Councillor Van Endolen, anything? Councillor Bjorkman, anything? No. And Councillor Guerin, your last, anything? I do have one thing. I would like to thank the Deputy Mayor Malash for yesterday. We had a nice dinner and we met with some developers. We can't let a lot of that out, but there's some great things happening in our municipality. Some great things. So there's some big developments happening. Hopefully it can go together. And once we have the final approval on everything, we can come out to the public and release it. But there's some great things happening in our community. So I just want council to know, I want the public to know, we're working every day to enhance and improve our municipality here. So once again, Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. You work hard, and I think like yesterday was just, it was a great meeting and a great dinner and great developers. So hopefully everything happens. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, moving to item 19.1 on the agenda, bylaws for third and final reading. Bylaw 2046 to confirm the proceedings from the July 19th, 2021 regular meeting of council.
Mover, please, on this one, on this bylaw. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? That one's carried. Go ahead.
Also for third reading this evening, bylaw 2023, being a bylaw to provide for the Graveline Drain, new bridge at MN 1241 and maintenance schedule of assessment.
Mover on this bylaw, please. Councillor Vanendel and Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 19.3 are bylaws for two readings only this evening. Bylaw 2050 being a bylaw to recover the capital costs related to the water main installation crossing Highway 3 at the 14th concession.
Mover on this one, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? That one's carried.
And bylaw 2048 for two readings, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this August 3rd, 2021 regular meeting of council.
Mover, please. Councillor Vanendel and Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? And could I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? Have a great evening, council. Enjoy the rest of your night.